It's not for sale.
All I need to do is take a look.
You must really like my car.
I do.
All right, you good?
Yep, I'm all good. I am purged of bodily functions and ready to talk about some movies.
What's up, guys? Thanks so much for joining us again. This is our quick half and half non-spoiler / spoiler review for The Little Things. What we're going to try to do is kind of have a front-loaded section where we're kind of discussing some of the background of the movie, what we thought, pitching it if we liked it, that kind of a thing, and then move into a spoiler section where we'll talk about things like the ending and our thoughts on the overall, how this worked for us and things like that. So we can kind of get into a little bit of that, whether we liked it or not, in the non-spoilers, and then we'll dive into a spoiler section where if you've seen the film and you want to kind of listen and hear our take, we'll get into it. But, an interesting story kind of going into it, not the plot, but kind of how the whole thing came to be. If you guys are familiar with John Lee Hancock, he's done a lot of movies that are kind of good, not great things like he did The Blind Side, he did The Alamo, he did The Rookie.
The Founder. The Founder is the only one I've seen. The Founder, of his, but that was actually okay. But it's like Oscar. It's like Oscar fare, but Oscar fare that's kind of like the lower end. It always seems like.
Right. Yeah. So movies you've heard of, movies you probably don't love, and I agree. I think The Founder is his best movie that I've seen. There's a few of these that I hadn't seen. I don't even think I've seen The Alamo.
Yeah, me neither.
I think I've seen The Blind Side, but to me, The Founder was kind of an interesting style that kind of set him apart a little bit. And Jared Leto was kind of so into The Founder. He loved The Founder, and then he kind of drew him to John Lee Hancock to kind of wanting to work with him. But it's kind of an interesting story. So this guy, John Lee Hancock, he's kind of an up-and-coming, struggling writer. He's living in a shitty LA apartment, kind of in the setting that the film kind of puts itself in kind of the ugly underbelly of Los Angeles, the places that, aren't super well photographed and traveled by tourists. I live in Southern California. I live about maybe 45 minutes south of LA. And it is just a massive, sprawling city that if you don't come out and spend a lot of time here, you don't really understand how big it is from time. I mean, it's just huge. The amount of people that live here is insane. And so John Lee Hancock, living in kind of a shitty part of LA, he really wanted to kind of capture that. He wrote kind of like a 20-page script in 1993. He was established enough that he had some kind of relationship with Steven Spielberg. He always kind of put the film in 1990, but wrote it in 1993, and honestly, I don't think there's a huge difference there.
No reason why. I have no. It seems very arbitrary, but okay.
Right. But anyway, so maybe something major may have happened in 1993. I have no idea, but what that kind of shifted things. Kind of got its way to Spielberg. Spielberg was wrapping up Schindler's List. Decided, hey, I don't really want to do two dark films back to back. And kind of decided to pass on it. It worked its way through a couple different people. It made its way at one point. Clint Eastwood was connected to it. It went to Warren Beatty, who had just done Dick Tracy, and he was kind of in talks to do it. It moved on to Danny DeVito, who had just kind of done War of the Roses and Hoffa around those same times. So kind of. It's been kicking around forever. And then, in 2000, he just kind of decided to kind of start doing other films like The Rookie and things like that. It was kind of where John Lee Hancock kind of got started. And then at some point, in the last couple of years, he went back to it because it had been kicking around. Enough people were kind of familiar with it. They liked the property. So he dug it out. I think he went back and read it and goes, yeah, you know what? Actually, this doesn't suck. I don't hate it. So I think he thought, going back and kind of rediscovering the characters and things like that, he would think it sucked and he wouldn't want to do it. But he actually was like, yeah, it's pretty intriguing. So he kind of got some juice back behind it. He was on board. He wrote it. He was planning to direct it, as he's a director now. And then in March 2019, Denzel comes on. He knew John Lee Hancock because John Lee Hancock is kind of known in the circles as a script doctor, and Denzel knew him from when he came on and helped out with Safe House in 2012, the Ryan Reynolds movie. So he kind of helped out on that one, knew his work, had the script, bada bing, bada boom. So he was kind of the first point. He was the first shoe to fall to get attached to this one. From there, once it had Denzel, then Rami Malek came on a few months later, and then Jared Leto a few months after that. And Leto actually, he turned it down initially just because he was worried about playing a kind of super creepy villain type, but he loved John Lee Hancock so much, and he loved the founder so much that he, I think he wanted to work with him, but he didn't necessarily love the character. And then as he got into the Albert Sparva character, he kind of decided, hey, this is actually gonna work for me. So kind of interesting how it all came out. Beyond that, I mean, it's just to give it a quick plot rundown. Denzel Washington plays kind of a disgraced, aging, former LAPD detective that has been kind of banished and exiled out to the outskirts of, I don't know where he was, Clark County?
Yeah, Clark County.
Kern County?
I think it was Clark County, but it could be.
Okay. So he's basically had to take a post in a smaller role doing some, basically he gets, assigned to do some bitch work basically and make this,
he's like a
driving
deputy
LA traffic.
too. Like he's like clearly like a man your age should not be in this rank.
No.
Like you fucked up at some point. And then like as the movie goes on, like I guess the movie hinges on he has to go to LA to do some sort of like bureaucratic some sort of like he has to get evidence, but he has to stay there overnight, and like he runs into his old precinct, and like everyone there is like, what the fuck are you doing here? Like the whole thing is like Denzel's got a vibe about him. He's haunted by something, and he's clearly got a chip on his shoulder, and like he's got a reputation, and they definitely do a good job of kind of doling that mystery out slowly.
It's obvious that he knows everyone who's there from prior work experience. He was there, for a long time, and it was like, I don't know, if you were the head bar manager at a restaurant or something, I don't know, and then you disappear for a while, and then they find you bringing kegs in, because like, oh, this is kind of what happened to you, huh? Looking at him like, man, how are you doing? Because they know why he was. It's not initially clear to the audience what happened, but it comes out later on, and you're kind of understood, but you're just kind of understanding that something unfortunate must have happened for him to kind of be in this life position. And he kind of has a weird initial contact with Rami Malek's character, who's kind of the young hotshot detective who is, giving a TV press conference about some crimes that have occurred involving some murdered girls, and they believe that, there may be a link in the cases, so that they're, anytime there's, serial killer shit sells, man. So, and, the TV cameras are there, and they're freaking out, and no one wants to believe there's serial killers in your local community, so that shit always gets a ton of coverage. So he sees, this guy come in, he figures out who he is from someone else, like, who is this guy, what is he doing? And then he understands, like, oh shit, this guy's a legend in the department. And he starts, once he figures out who he is, he kind of decides, man, I want to get, I want to learn everything I can from this guy real quick. I want to, he wants to take him out to breakfast. He wants to grab a cup of coffee with him. Hey, why don't you come along? We just, found another dead body. Why don't you come give me your take on the case? You know what I mean? So kind of slowly starts like wanting to kind of get his feel for things. And he's right there. Denzel is giving him the feedback and immediately going through stuff, and basically kind of he just basically stays up in LA helping with this case by taking vacation time. He goes and gets a shitty apartment in like basically swap house.
It's like those temporary, you can stay here $20 like, for a week or something ridiculous.
Right. Not quite a youth hostel, but like I get a flop house, I think is what you would call it. It's basically where you would take hookers and stuff. So yeah, super low end apartment. Not quite an extended stay, but a man is basically in a cage dealing with you on a nightly basis, and can get you drugs, hookers, whatever, sent up to your room, kind of a thing. So he's staying on and kind of gets more involved in the case, as Rami Malek and Denzel basically are working together to try to figure out and find some suspects, and they kind of stumble into, Denzel does actual police work that kind of leads them in the direction of getting towards Jared Leto's character, who's this kind of creepy loner who I thought Jared Leto did actually a pretty good job of really transforming into this guy. I think initially when you don't look closely, you're like, it looks like Jared Leto. But man, when you start looking at it and you're watching him on screen, you're like, whoa, shit! Like he looks quite a bit different.
Yeah, clearly, like he had a fully formed. The dude's got a walk. He's got like a little bit of a beer gut. Like he's got all these little mannerisms that were clearly
teeth,
thought out. Apparently,
hair,
I didn't realize it, but he was apparently wearing a fake nose. Like it was like, but. It doesn't look that different from his real nose, so I didn't know that fact until I looked it up later or whatever. But so as usual, like you gotta hand it to Jared Leto. He's like got that commitment.
Well, it's weird, I was watching a bunch of interviews with him, just trying to get some tidbits or whatever, but apparently he just kind of stayed in character the whole time. He was saying like, I've still never met Denzel Washington. You know what I mean? So he,
man, I don't know.
Well,
I like him.
That's what he says.
I admire his commitment, but sometimes he makes me roll my eyes. I don't know.
Well, it was weird just learning kind of his process a little bit, where he doesn't watch his old movies. He doesn't watch anything that he's ever done. He doesn't watch dailies. He doesn't watch. He's like, I just saw what I look like in the movie because they sent me a poster to like have in the background of my press junket stuff from my home. So he was like, I don't look at myself in the mirror. I don't look at myself on the prompter. I don't rehearse. He was like, I don't rehearse. I haven't rehearsed in 10 years.
Wow.
And so,
I mean,
it's just he's kind of like this a little bit wild man in a modern era of all that shit being hammered down, nailed down.
But he's still got to like prepare to get in that mental state, right? Yeah. Like you don't just show up to set on the first day with all of those like mannerisms figured out. I know, like, okay, so he doesn't rehearse. I can understand that. Like maybe he doesn't show up to set and rehearse a scene. That's fine. But motherfuckers, like he's in that trying to be Daniel Day-Lewisy kind of school of like I'm just going hard into the method acting thing, and he's already done the Christian Bale weight gain, weight loss thing multiple times over for his Oscars, and I think he's a really good actor. Like sometimes his shtick does get a little annoying, but and also I'm like waiting for the day he's got such the like aloof, wafty religious
completely he's gone total
when is he gonna play
Jesus
mode. Just play Jesus already, dude. But so I thought it was interesting that you said that he really was interested by the founder, because I just heard the other day that he's apparently signed up for a movie to play the WeWork guy, the CEO of WeWork, and I've seen interviews with that guy
on Apple TV, I think
it's something like that, and it's I'm like, okay, I can totally see, and that would totally tap into that same probably whatever you found interesting about the founder sort of thing, but like mixed with, kind of the crunchy granola pseudo-religious kind of hippy-dippy energy or whatever. So that's like totally, I think, up his alley. Like if he does more, I wish he like almost kind of was a little bit more tongue-in-cheek with his like whole persona a little bit. Like, but all that being said, I think he is a very good actor, and he is like, despite all that stuff, I do like the majority of his performances. Never liked his band. I could never get into 30 Seconds to Mars or whatever the hell it was, but I respect him for having a hit band while he's also a fucking movie star, so well,
I mean, the dude is like a quadruple threat or something. I mean, he was to do the acting and then the music. The great thing about him is that he can actually afford to do whatever the fuck he wants, because he's not a slave to any one of these industries.
Yeah, you could walk away anytime from either.
And because he was kind of saying like, hey, I took a break, because from Joker to now, has he really done much? Like, I know he has Morbius like done, but he really didn't do a whole lot, and especially after Dallas Buyers Club, he didn't really cash in and go for hit the like Kevin Hart rock movies and shit like that,
Well, it's hard, man. Like, it does seem more and more like once you get that Oscar, it's kind of in some ways like a curse, because your post-Oscar life is a little bit, there's always like that transition period where you're trying to find your identity, and it can kill a lot of careers. There's a lot of people that like, win an Oscar and like never find their footing afterwards, and then just kind of like go into obscurity. So
Yeah, where you kind of have to walk that tightrope of I can't be seen doing this.
Yeah.
But you also have way more latitude to kind of do some wild shit.
You have to...
You know what I mean? I feel like McConaughey really embraced that after the Oscar win,
Yeah.
where he was doing gold and shit.
But even he kind of, like, the reconnaissance, like... Or, McConaughey's still an interesting actor, but I feel like his reconnaissance had an arc, and it's almost like... we're on the Serenity end of the reconnaissance arc, so but like I feel like that is that way with everyone, so it's tough. It's almost like unless the only ways you kind of keep on riding that wave is like if you just constantly reinvent yourself, because the other thing is like once you win that Oscar, the biggest thing you got to worry about is being overexposed, I think, or you yourself just kind of gets fed up with the industry. So you kind of have to like do something new, but also do it in a way that people like don't get sick of you. I don't know. It's rough, man. I don't think like really like I think like what's the best example? Like what's like Tom Hanks, I guess, or something? Like is that the...
Yeah, man, I'm trying to think of someone who's unlikable. I think you could find Jared Leto's whole thing to be unlikable, where he's kind of this weird like he reminds me of the alien version of Mr. Burns from The Simpsons when he goes to the doctor and everyone thinks he's like that's literally Jared Leto. I've watched so much interview footage just recently. And he is in this I don't know if you're on lithium, my man, or something, but he's high on life. He seems completely just nothing can really bother me. And I'm just existing in this time and I'm just happy to be here. Thank you so much for your time. You can't be mad at him. He's literally just a weird hippie Jesus right now. His hair is down to his ass. And he's wearing like Gucci robes in his home and shit. I've watched so many of these weird. It's wild. Like we got to get into the press junket footage because, like, we got to get into this hustle. And it's wild. Like I don't know. I must have watched 30 different like 4-minute clips where all these people are like, "Hey man, nice to see you again. Haven't seen you since blah 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 whatever." And then you watch the actor have to scramble as they go, "Oh yeah, man, like good to see you too." Like I wonder how many people you just convince. Like
just by
this guy got real weird with. He was like, "Oh, I met your mom, and it was so great. Like you still need to meet my mom and shit." I'm like, "Wow, dude! Like some of these are wild." You're trying to be super weirdly kind of like too friendly with some of these people, but I kind of get it in a way.
Yeah, it's cool,
weird.
but yeah, I mean, I respect people that can do that, but I feel like whenever you got like a crowd of people. And like everyone wants you
like
to
this is his 18th in a row. Yeah, like
it's
man, they must just appear as like you're just a voice. It's like Aaron Rodgers losing the Super Bowl and you're just taking shit from people or something. You know what I mean? Just next question.
Yes.
Do you remember Mike talking about his Jared Leto stories? Because Jared Leto, he went to GW for a while, which is our old stomping grounds.
No way,
yeah.
Really?
He went to George Washington for a little bit. He grew up in D.C. a little bit.
I did not know that.
And yeah, he was like a visual arts major or something and wanted to get into painting. And then he went to a school in Philly and then he moved to a school in New York. But our good friend Mike, apparently, like he's told these stories for forever. I remember him like at 14 telling us these stories or whatever. But I think his older brother, like his oldest brother, was good friends with Jared Leto. And Jared Leto was like the real young kid in their crew. He was like 14 or 15, hanging out with like 21-year-olds going to clubs. And he was like the most successful ladies' man of like this group of like 22-year-olds. Do you remember him telling these stories?
I did not ever hear those stories.
He would just out there slang apparently. But good for him. Can you imagine a 15-year-old Jared Leto angel face just running around the streets of U Street or Adams Morgan?
I mean, all this is surprising, but none of this is shocking. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, oh, yeah, of course. He probably was, like, crushing Major Cougar Poon, like, all through, like, but, like, it's like one of those things, like, some kids just grow up and they've got that, like, rock star, mentality, from like, middle school or something like that. And,
Imagine, yeah, young Jared Leto, musician vibes, model vibes, actor vibes, running around. He must have had a time of his life. And now he's kind of like above it all, and he's been there, done that. By the way, do you know he's like 50 years old right now?
That was gonna be my next question. Is like, because the dude's
he's 49, which is basically 50, but he looks incredible. Yeah. I don't know what he's doing. He probably is some sort of Morbius type creature that is living off, the young youth or whatever. But my man, he's just out there rock climbing. He's just out there in a Joshua Tree hanging out, being one with the universe. God bless him.
Whatever you're doing, man, keep it up.
Just keep it up, bro. I mean, Jesus. It looks better than both of us combined times a million. Yeah. So he's killing it out there. Well, anyway, so we kind of ran down the basic plot. Do you want to get into some of the spoiler stuff? Let's see. I don't know that I really have anything non-spoiler.
Yeah, unfortunately,
left.
This is a movie that is like very. It's hard to discuss without the spoilers. So it is a good movie for people to. I would recommend people if you have an interest in the movie, and a review. Should we give a non-spoiler review?
Let's do a quick one. Let's say, this is still non-spoiler, and I think it's. Did you like it? Did you broadly maybe what didn't you like? What didn't work for you? Would you recommend it? That kind of thing.
I feel like I in general, I would say without talking about the spoiler. I think once you get into a lot of the third act stuff, it gets kind of interesting. And there is some stuff, like, early on, I was initially intrigued, and there's some good acting and some good cinematography on display. But all in all, it is a little slow, and it's, intriguing. There's some cool scenes in it. And, if it's on HBO Max, it's a good, I guess, HBO movie, but I still was like a little bored by it. It was nice. It's kind of got a little bit of comfort food. It's nice to see Denzel in his like Denzel 90s cop movie pocket. The whole fact that like this feels like it's from the 90s, the fact that it was written squarely between when Silence of the Lambs and Seven came out is very telling, because this feels like very much in that alley, almost too much to certain points, but it's still enjoyable. Like, there's like cool scenes in it, cool acting, and I was intrigued by the mystery to a point. Yeah, like at a certain point I'm kind of like was wondering where it was going, and then kind of when it showed me where it was going, I was like, okay, that's interesting, but I kind of wish it got to that point earlier and kind of dealt with what it was introducing towards the end. So I know I'm kind of talking about it obliquely, but so it is interesting. Like, I would say, like, it's like it's enjoyable. Like, I would say the biggest like selling point for it is like, they don't make these movies anymore. Like, if it didn't have this whole thing where this script was written 20 years ago and this director hasn't made all this clout in recent years, like, no one would make this would be a True Detective season or something like that. And frankly, I think True Detective, like, at least like the first season, like, is able to do a better job than I think that a movie like this can do, just because it's limitations of 2 hours and everything like that. But there is some interesting stuff here, and it does feel like one of those movies from the 90s, like Jade or something like that. You know what I mean? Like the 90s, or Kiss the Girls, like one of those types of things. So if you're...
The spider, what was it?
Yeah, what is it? That Along Came a Spider?
Along Came a Spider, right, with Morgan Freeman and stuff.
Yeah,
right?
like, so if you like those types of movies, and I love those types of movies too, this definitely does make you nostalgic for it. I kind of just wish, like, honestly, like, it might be because I'm like more ADD these days, but I did actually was kind of like, I wish they threw in, like, I don't know, like a car chase or something like that, or a little bit more action, weirdly enough. Like, I kind of wanted like a little bit more confrontation. There's some good like emotional confrontations, or like, conversations and actors, and everything like that. It was like a little slow at parts for me and everything. Oh, and Rami Malek, I think, is good, but he was doing something with his voice. His, like, I don't want to do it, but it's like he's got this like monotone delivery.
I think that's just Rami Malek.
Is that
though.
him?
He's literally the same in every. He even did it weirdly in the Queen movie.
Really? Oh, okay.
Where I love Queen and Freddie Mercury, so he never was Freddie Mercury to me.
Yeah, it just never worked.
Like, I could never just. It always just looked like Rami Malek wearing a goofy wig or wearing goofy teeth.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that was not an incredible shout out, bro.
I have not seen and I heard I've not seen that, and I think I saw the first episode of Mr. Robot and I liked it, but I never got on the bandwagon, so I can't I think that's literally the only thing I've ever seen him in. That's
I feel like that's about as close to who he probably really is.
Right. It's one of those things where you might be attributing something to someone's acting talent that might more just be their weird personality, kind of like how the wife in Mad Men got everyone applauded her for being kind of like a vapid housewife character, and then you found out she can't act. Not to diss her or anything, but that did seem a little bit to be the case. But anyway.
And then just so we kind of ran down the other two, but some of the stuff that I've seen, a lot of people seem upset about Denzel is wasted in this movie, and you didn't really this is beneath him, this level of stuff. I mean, have you guys been seeing The Equalizer 3 or whatever? I mean, he's out there,
I feel like this is
he winning? He's in his Liam Neeson action phase of his life right now. It's like, is this really a waste of Denzel?
No,
like,
this totally made sense, because it feels like a nice medium between his like grizzled old man shit with like today with The Equalizer, with like something like The Bone Collector from back in the 90s,
like Man on Fire or something. So, just bring it back a little bit.
And he's good. It's like there's everyone in it. Like, he's real. I would say, because like Jared Leto was good, but everything he was doing was so mannered that like. It's like, okay, I'll put it this way. None of the actors, like, not for a second when I was watching this movie was I ever sucked into the movie to the point where I was like, oh, these are characters and everything like that. Like, it's always like, oh, this is a movie and that's Denzel Washington and that's Jared Leto. Like, I never really fully lost myself. But like, I feel like Denzel, just because he's so good and so comfortable in that mode, like, was the guy that kind of sucked me in the most. Like, he was able and he's making choices too. Like, he had this interesting like paunch to him or something like that, right? Like, it seemed, I don't know, I haven't seen him in a movie in a while. I haven't seen the Equalizer movies, so like I didn't know if he's like gained a little weight or if he gained some weight for the role or something like that. But I thought that was kind of good, because it did kind of I felt like I've seen that cop, you know what I mean? That kind of almost has like a weird like gait about them, or they like walk with their like gut leading. I don't even know how to describe it.
Power gut.
So he had that, and then like, damn, he was like working his gum in some scenes, where he's like, where you're just like chewing your gum extra hard to show that you're concentrating and serious and shit like that. Like, he, there's certain parts in that like, it's almost kind of funny, but I think that like actually made me enjoy it a little bit more. But that's the thing, is like, I think like Denzel, just because Denzel is kind of charming, and even when he's kind of crazy, he's kind of charming too. Like, I feel like he's the one guy that kind of like, I feel like brought weirdly some levity to it, even though he's like really intense and crazy and everything like that. Like, it's just Malek and Leto are so dour serious and everything like that, and kind of like aloof, that like not that they're bad, but their characters are so like energy neutral or whatever. I definitely,
both of them seem to be severely on the spectrum somehow.
And it's like, there's a lot of like quiet scenes of two low energy guys talking quietly. So it definitely, there's certain scenes that like, like definitely it feels like there's a vacuum of energy or something like that. But sometimes that's the point too, I think, because it's not like this is the fucking happy-go-lucky movie. Like I did like the tone sometimes. Like the one of the best parts of the movie I'd say is like the way it's shot and like the atmosphere of some of the scenes, and like I really like that like LA desert noir stuff, you know. So all that was, you know, it's like vaguely kind of like No Country for Old Men feeling a little bit, some scenes too. Yeah, I would say, but in the end, I've heard people describe this as, oh, it's almost like they thought of a twist and then they kind of tried to figure out a movie around it. And I gotta admit, I'd be a little bit inclined to agree about that, because like the third act stuff is interesting, and I almost kind of wish they started the story like deeper into that so you could kind of deal with the consequences of all that sort of stuff more. And the other thing too is you're like left a little bit emotionally unsatisfied the way things turn out, but like it's like one of those things, is that the point? I had a very similar experience with we were talking about recently, like Promising Young Woman, where it's like, where I'm like, I don't feel satisfied, but is that the point? And in any case, if that is the point, I still don't feel good. So does that make for, you know, it sends me into this tizzy of like what makes for a good movie experience, kind of like existential questions and everything like that. So I had a little bit of that experience with this movie too, because there's a lot of elements in it that I enjoy, and I think that are people working at you know, pretty much the top of their abilities and everything like that. But yeah, I almost kind of wish it got another rewrite, the script a little bit, just like another somebody else to come in and kind of juice it up a little bit. And honestly, like I know, yeah, I heard the whole thing about how Spielberg had been considering making it at some point, and I'm shocked because I can not picture him making this movie at all. Clint Eastwood, totally. Like I could totally picture this being like a 90s, early 2000s Clint Eastwood movie, but I cannot. Like, can you picture Spielberg doing this movie?
No.
Without massive rewrites?
It's not a big enough scale for Spielberg. Totally. It doesn't, yeah, like you can't, you know, the merchandising, like nothing is there.
I feel like
this
it's
doesn't
too
have
morally grade, I feel like, for his types of movies too, you know?
Yeah, I mean, like his darker, like his tougher stuff is, you know, you look at you know, Schindler's List, even Saving Private Ryan, like they're built around massive historical World War II, Holocaust, like those are just Oscar darling, waiting to happen kind of things. This would not really be up that alley for him, I don't think.
I think there's like, well, in like, even in Spielberg's like darkest shit, I feel like there's a inherent faith in humanity that like I do not see in this work. Like it's not got a very optimistic view of like people and everything like that. So that's the biggest thing where I was like, yeah, like if Spielberg was, you know, like Spielberg gets a lot attached to a lot of projects, but I feel like if he was going to do this movie, he was going to like have somebody come in and like, you know, totally David Koepp would come in and like fucking, you know, make a little kid character come in that to, you know, there'd be a lot of more Spielberg-y stuff in this if it was a Spielberg movie.
No, I agree. And John Williams trying to string it up somehow.
What if there's a talking pie?
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, there you go. So we've kind of discussed it. I, you know, very quickly here, I enjoyed it. I think it's worth you checking out if you so have the ability with HBO Max and you want to go see it in a theater. It's kind of getting murdered a little bit. I think if you look at having 3 Oscar winners as your 3 leads, and I think it's doing at 48% on Rotten Tomatoes. So that is pretty rough. You know, a lot of people are kind of saying, I've seen some stuff saying Denzel was wasted. It's an outdated premise. It feels dated. It has a horrible third act. Those are things other people are kind of saying. As we shift here and kind of go into the spoilers, like I'm happy to kind of get into my either affirmations of those ideas or where I don't really see, you know, a lot of people are comparing, oh, this is just 7. Oh, they just remade 7 again. And I find it kind of a lazy comparison because it's kind of it's an older black cop and a younger white cop. And 7 had that. And they also had this weird kind of aloof, you know, main suspect / killer / whatever you want to call him. And I'm like, okay, but he wrote it before 7 came out,
yeah.
right?
Well, and
So,
people forget, like, in the early 90s, there was a whole subgenre of this type of cops versus serial, that 7 and, like, really Silence of the Lambs probably more, like, it existed before Silence of the Lambs, but that probably was the thing to really get it started. But
I mean, I think the book might have come out before he wrote this.
Totally.
Or whatever, but yeah.
But
I
there's
agree.
probably, like, I don't know, like 20 movies that came out that were that nobody remembers, that some of them are probably very good too. So yeah, I mean, I agree. I feel like, this definitely fits firmly into that pocket. So it's almost like I wanted to picture this movie in a Blockbuster video store, you know what I mean? Like it's totally one of those movies that you always see on the shelf, but you never know what the plot is, or like Palmetto or something like that, you know what I mean? Or something like that's like a I know this exists. Oh, that's got like Tom Sizemore in this movie, Oliver Stone direct. You know what I mean? Like it's always that like
right. It's got like Martin Sheen in it somehow, and like it's a Spader film or something, and yeah,
it's it's enough to be interesting. I would say anything being on HBO Max that is in theaters, I would almost say, unless it's like a total piece of shit, is probably worth viewing, right? Like
sure, totally. I mean, I think any one of those three guys, if they had a film that was just going to be available to me on HBO Max, I'd watch it. And if you've combined them all, and you've a pretty good, decent, good director that I've seen other stuff that I enjoyed, it's worth the time commitment of 2 hours or something. So there you go. That's my I'd give it a positive. At least it's worth your time. Is it going to win Best Picture? Probably not. You know what I mean? But like, is it worth your time? In my opinion, it's worth your time.
Would be a Redbox movie if it weren't a Max movie. That would be. I would say it's like it's a rental or a streaming. So if it's already on streaming, then it's worth checking out, I would say.
It's no Shadow in the Clouds.
The masterpiece.
The masterpiece. Okay, so we are now gonna hard shift. This is it. You've been warned. If you haven't seen the film, go watch it. Pause, bookmark this, come back. If not, we'll see you later. Have a great one.
See you on the other side.
We appreciate it. See you on the other side. See you in hell.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so now shifting. You've been warned. Okay.
It's so crazy how Jared
Volpe.
Leto turned out to be an alien at the end.
Can you believe it? I couldn't believe he was an alien at the end.
It really was Mr. Burns.
Yeah. That would be incredible if that was somehow the case.
If this movie turned into like a 10 Cloverfield Lane, and suddenly threw in some aliens or something like that, I would have been pretty interested. I did like the third act twist though. That now that we're fully in spoilers, I think like, the twist is interesting.
Well, what is the twist for you?
It's not really like a twist, but it's kind of like...
It's not really a twist. I think telling people there's a twist is a spoiler.
Oh, yeah. See, well, that's the thing is I didn't... Like I said, I had very minimal... both lead up and post, knowledge of all this stuff afterwards. So yeah, I didn't know there was supposed to be I assumed in a movie like this, like there tends to be some sort of like weird,
you can say a 7 twist.
Well, yeah, but like I think like every movie needs some sort of like unexpected thing to happen, otherwise it's a boring movie.
I think Shyamalan has ruined he's ruined twists. Right? Where like everything is measured against Shyamalan now. You know what I mean? Or like, unless you get Shyamalan, then it's just a plot thing that happens in the movie. You know what I mean? Like, oh shit. Well, I got some questions for you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Please
can you answer these? Do you like the ghost women stuff where Denzel's haunted by the victims of the crimes he didn't solve?
I was wondering, I kind of like went back and forth between wondering if that was like pretentious or not. I kind of like the imagery of it, and same thing, it probably would have been a lot more compelling 20 or 30 years ago. It was alright. The other thing that kind of got me is I kind of wished that, I don't know, everyone looks very actory and everything like that. I kind of wished, like, the victims looked like just less actory. I don't know how else to put it, but, like...
I mean, that poor dead girl, they pulled the bag off her head. She didn't look that actory.
Yeah, I guess that's I guess so. I don't. I'll also kind of have to. I was drinking and making a sandwich while I was watching a lot parts of this movie, so I might have missed.
I thought you'd committed to our moving forward, our pledge of interruptionless, distractionless reviews.
Did I agree to that?
As we've mentioned in the well, we're not charging for it yet, so I guess I won't hold you.
Well,
to
no,
it.
that's for the Patreon. We have a Patreon feed.
Yeah, once we start a Patreon, we will create an option where we're basically guaranteeing, and I'm willing to live stream myself watching the movie.
Yeah, we'll totally.
I think that might be the only way to do it, because then it's a proof. I'm not folding clothes while we're watching it. I'm not preparing a salad, perhaps.
See what people are getting here.
Balancing my checkbook.
This is the platinum level. We will. If you want to see us professional, that is gold star, my friend. So if you want the silver plan, then you get us like somewhere in between.
Leave us a comment if you're willing to pay us to not look at Instagram thoughts while we're watching Denzel deal with ghost people.
I mean, but yeah, that. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Before you get sidetracked.
I was gonna say. I think going back to Denzel's belly, did you notice that he's a lot thinner in the flashback sequences?
Was he? Because, you only kind of see him. I liked his suit in the flashback. Honestly, just having him dressed.
He looks like he's got his shit together. Yeah. He looks like he's well-dressed, but he looks like he's in shape. Mm-hmm. I was like, shit, did they de-age Denzel a little bit? Because he looks like, 19... he looks like Remember the Titans Denzel almost, you know what I mean? And then they clearly, I don't know if they gave him the gut or whatever, but yeah, I think they clearly wanted to translate, hey, his life's not great. Yeah. He's divorced, he's living alone, he's eating Hot Pockets, his only companion is that scruffy dog in the middle of Santa Clarita or wherever the hell he is. And I think just, and it's another form of fat shaming to me, where they're just like, life sucks, killed a girl by accident, divorced, don't talk to your children, fat.
I mean, well, so the one thing is it's less, it's just that, like, it's the shock of seeing somebody famous to play someone fat. I think that's the thing, is like, if you saw that happen more.
Well, we need to normalize fat people. What happened to Rebel Wilson? She's changing.
You could do the opposite and go full machinist, but that's a harder thing. And the thing is, it can't. I feel like gaining weight, you can gain lesser weight for more impact if you're normally perceived as a pretty fit person. So I don't know.
I mean, I was watching going back to Leto, when he was, is it David Curtis Chapman, or who was the guy that he Lennon's killer in that movie where he gained like 68 pounds?
And he got gout or whatever, famously.
I mean, he was literally, he's like that? Yeah. Right, yeah. Sorry, whoever I said.
But yeah, Lindsay Lohan, Lindsay Lohan was in that. Yeah.
She's in that movie?
I've never seen it, but I think it's called like Chapter 7, Chapter 9, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And, but he said it basically, it like ruined his life. He's like, I'll never do that again.
I don't understand why
it changed the way I laughed. I mean, he's like, it destroyed my body.
It's such a terrible, like, for things that really don't seem worth it. And it's the thing that sucks is the Oscars do just always encourage that, because it's like, you do a body transformation, especially which one of the categories of which is gain or lose a bunch of weight.
Has anyone won for gaining weight?
Oh, totally. I mean, Robert De Niro.
Like, did De Niro win for? Yeah, but what direction did he do it?
He did in both. That's the thing that was cool about it, is he got super fit and then he got super fat. And the best part of the movie is it does a time cut, so it cuts from when he wins the belt to like 7 years later when he's fat and washed up, and it's like such a sharp.
Raging Bull, by the way,
Raging Bull. Sorry. So yeah, that's like one of the best cuts in cinema. But there's other people have tried to do that and everything like that. I
feel like going fat isn't going to get you the gold. You know
it's what I mean? Not, it's got to, as always, it's got to be the right subject matter. I think I just recently heard, isn't Darren Aronofsky's next project? It's called, all I know about it is it's called The Whale, and he just cast Brendan Fraser as the lead, who has been famously fat-shamed for gaining weight lately. So I'm like, is he going to lean into that?
He's like an at-home recluse that weighs like 600 pounds,
something like
right?
that. So, which honestly sounds I'm fucking down because I feel like I want to see that, and that sounds so Aronofsky and everything like that. But
do you know the legend of Brendan Fraser?
Oh no.
Well, like his life, like you know about his divorce and everything, and like I think he had to go. I think his wife, don't quote me on this, people, but I think he was like his ex-wife was awarded like $3 million a year, something like that. And like he got married right before The Mummy came out.
Oh, when he was like riding high.
Locked him into that tax bracket. And then the divorce was like they were only married. I want to say they were married like 10 years or less. But basically, it destroyed his health. It destroyed his career. He had to go back to court to fight to lower it down and all this stuff. I mean, you can't sustain that.
Well,
you know what I mean? So that's
like he was getting paid back because I remember back in the day he was making the headlines for like Mummy Returns. He got paid like $20 million or something ridiculous for.
What did he get for George of the Jungle?
It's something. I mean, it's still double digits in the millions. You know, which is probably
back in is that late 90s?
That's like probably like 2000, maybe 99, something like. Because he did. I remember he did.
Brendan Fraser. He's been in some sneaky great movies.
Yeah. But then it was like that weird thing where like 2006, 2007, him, you know, it's that same place you go where like once you start like only doing kids movies, you kind of like you go through that squalor for like 5 years and then you just disappear.
He was great, dude. I mean, he had Airheads, 97. Yeah. George of the Jungle, 98 maybe. He had Bedazzled, wasn't great. Are you
forgetting the classic known as Encino Man?
Well, I'm not forgetting that. I mean, Pauly Shore.
I think I heard they're doing a sequel to that now, too. So he's trying to reconnaissance. You know, they're all trying to reconnaissance.
I mean, and then he started doing the Monkey Bones, you know what I mean, after the Mummy and stuff.
Where
and then
it started to turn.
Bedazzled, I think, is where it started to turn. I think it started getting bad.
Bedazzled is not a good movie, but it's still got its moments that are funny. Like, you know, I liked that he tried to do, you know, that's a good, weird acting role for, you know, him playing 5 different parts. And
right. I think he was in danger because, like, remember, like, School Ties and stuff when he was real young? And then, did you ever see The Scout?
Oh, no. Oh
man, The Scout is great. You don't really even have to be he's like this baseball prodigy that's living in the middle of nowhere in Mexico, and he lives like a god, and like the general. Man, I'm trying to remember.
Seeing the trailers for this when I was a kid.
Dude, it's great. It's great, and he plays kind of like he's like a mental case.
Oh yeah, he's okay. Yeah.
So the guy who it's not. I always want to say Mel Brooks, which isn't correct, but it's the guy who was Scorpio in The Simpsons.
Oh yeah, with the
is it Al Brooks?
I think so. Yeah,
Al Brooks. He goes down. He's like a baseball scout, and he's like living with him in his apartment, and he's like selling them to the Yankees and stuff. It's a great movie. But anyway, poor Brendan Fraser. Where were we?
So his wife taking him for ex-wife taking him all his money,
destroy his life.
Just Brendan Fraser. How did we get it? Brendan Fraser is. How did we get talking about Brendan Fraser?
I don't know.
Kids, write in the comments. How did we get started talking about Brendan Fraser? No. So we were talking about weight gain, weight loss, and that led us.
Oh, there we go.
Fraser.
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah.
So weight gain, weight loss. I think it's like, you know, it's if you can do it, it's always admirable, and used in conjunction with the right role, it's amazing. It can be amazing, but I think like it is really kind of on the other end sometimes kind of disgusting the hoops people, because it kind of like almost turns it into less about the acting and more about like, you know,
how many pints of Ben and Jerry's can you drink a day?
Yeah, or like for instance the latter half of Shia LaBeouf's career where it kind of becomes this weird freak show of like what the fuck is he gonna do next. You know, so like same thing, like I feel like, you know, because who was another one? So remember Emile Hirsch was supposed to play John Belushi a few years ago, and he was trying to put on weight because God forbid you cast a fat actor to play a fat guy. He's a bad Belushi. He's too good looking for I don't Belushi. Understand how he was doing it or whatever. But apparently, so I think he was trying to do the method acting thing because...
Well, he lost a lot of weight for the Call of the Wild or Chris McCandless book movie,
yes.
right?
And then he did like Speed Racer and all that stuff, and he was kind of like... But I think he was trying to do his like... Trying to do all the shit that like Fraser's doing now, where you go for your biopic weird weight gain Oscar movie, And but the thing is, like, he got into a bunch of trouble because he got really wasted at some party and threw some executive chick off a table or something like that. And then I never heard about the Belushi movie after that. So I assume he might have gotten too into his weird method acting. This is all conjecture, so don't, take my word for it or whatever. But it's a dangerous path, man. I feel like that's the other hand of it. Is like, is the project worth you doing all this stuff? Because I feel like and that's probably my biggest beef with some of the Jared Leto stuff, and unfortunately it's like one of those things where once the press gets a hold of it, it becomes toxic. But some of the stuff that it does feel like it's really hard to be a method actor and not come off as a little bit pretentious. So and it's like one of those things where it's like if that's what works for you, then fine, because you probably don't care anyways what people think of you. You know what I mean? But there is certain degrees of like, do you have to go that whole hog and everything like that? But all that being said, I did like most of the acting in this movie. I'd say that's probably one of the bigger draws for it overall. It's nice to see an adult movie with adults acting and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, just like dark subject matter. It's like, once again, like standard procedural, like look at a dead chick's body in a morgue kind of thing, and it's super dark, but like it was definitely intriguing, and I like certain things, like I liked Denzel talking to the dead girl and everything like that. That's weird, and I like that scene, where they're at the roundabout and like they keep on they're on the other opposite sides of the
yep. And they're just kind of fucking. Leto's just fucking with them.
Yeah. Like, there's some cool stuff there. And that scene where he goes into the apartment and everything like that. Like, yeah, like there were like definitely parts where I kept on feeling like the movie coming to life, and then then it felt like it kind of like settled into a little bit like more talking and stuff like that, which I kind of wanted. I did want a little, because the one thing is, like, I feel like the movie can't go fully into that thriller kind of genre, because it's trying to leave you guessing if Jared Leto is the killer or not. So you can't have Jared Leto or whoever do anything damning. You know what I mean? So it really is more of just like a cop procedural, like crime, like mystery. You know what I mean? And and so like the biggest thing is like, then at the end the movie doesn't become about the mystery at all. You know what I mean? Like, the killer of the girls is still out there, right? Like unless I miss, because like I was definitely like trying to check if I missed some stuff at the end, but like it's like Rami Malek just kills the wrong dude, and they like are like, okay, well, fuck it, we'll just try to hide the body, and that's it. Like, the killer's still out there and no justice is served, and some creepy weirdo is dead. You know what I mean? Like,
well, that's the thing. It's so the ending basically leaves you with, and by the way, if you're fucking with cops and you're out in the middle of the desert with them, and you're clearly, then just prepare to die.
Coming. Like, I mean, that's the one thing. I mean, what do you think? It's like that's kind of the thing that takes away from it a little bit, because it's like, well, okay, the guy's innocent, but probably.
Well, that's another question. Do you think he was innocent or no?
I think so. Because, okay, so, like, it seems like, and this part I actually ended up having to kind of, like, read up on and everything like that, because it didn't totally connect with me, but when it's basically like, okay, Rami Malek accidentally kills Jared Leto after he's, like, taunting him, saying, oh, the bodies are out here, oh, just kidding, it's not out here. Rami Malek freaks out, kills Jared Leto. Denzel comes by, says, don't worry, we can hide the body, get rid of the car, and all that sort of shit. Denzel goes over to Guy's house, searches his whole apartment, saying, as he was saying, there's got to be some sort of evidence in his apartment that would convince you that he's the killer. Then it shows the shot of Denzel in the apartment with all the garbage bags, kind of like holding his head, so I assume he didn't find anything. But then he mails Rami Malek the beret, saying no angel. Yeah. So the thing I didn't connect was he mails him the beret with saying no angel, so I guess Rami Malek can feel better thinking, oh, hey, maybe he was the killer. But then it shows Denzel burning a bunch of shit, and he's got like a fresh freshly opened pack of Barrettes. So it seems
right with just the red one missing.
Yeah. So once again, there could be other interpretations, and this did not. I think because I had missed some stuff in certain parts of the beginning, like I was wondering, like, oh, did I missed something? But that does seem pretty clear cut, like, or at least like I don't have any beef with that interpretation, and I think it's interesting. Like I think it's like it's a compelling moral quandary, but it sucks. Like I almost wish there was a way. Even though I know it's the third act twist, I wish that shit kind of came in like halfway through the movie as like like almost make it more like like Psycho or something like that, where it suddenly changes gears and turns into a different movie halfway through, because I almost wanted to see the ramifications of that stuff a little bit more. But it's a little bit like, like if you look at like, okay, what was this movie about? Jared Leto, some dumbass that messes with some cops until he accidentally gets himself killed. At the end, you know what I mean? Like it's like,
well, so yeah, like I always circle back to like Denzel does police work that leads him to Jared Leto. Then he becomes a suspect, right? Because of the repair shop shit, because of the location, because of, like he is actually solving it. They come up with Jared Leto. He's convinced it's Jared Leto, and then he bites and keeps goading them and keeps kind of like initially really the only scene where he's not fully kind of toying with them is the scene where he doesn't realize Denzel's a cop yet, where he's kind of like, oh, you're just a guy. Once he figures out they're cops, he's completely bit into messing with them. To me, they bring him into questioning and he's excited to get his Miranda card and all that stuff, right? So like he's a crime aficionado.
Yeah.
And by the way, let me just briefly say this. What a time to be alive, to be a criminal. You know what I mean? Like, we can't go out and commit crimes like they could back in the day.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's cameras on every street corner now. You know what I mean? So, shout out to all the criminals of the 1990s. Can you imagine being a criminal? Like, imagine being like a 25-year-old criminal in 1990 and you're just out there. You're just trying to hustle nowadays. Like, it must be incredibly hard. It just got progressively harder.
Who
and
will
harder
think
to be
of
a
the criminals? Please think of the criminals.
Well,
but no, I agree.
but just imagine,
it feels
right?
like the Wild West these days. Everything that's like pre-internet and like CCTVs everywhere and everything like that is like or cell phones. Feels like a million years ago.
Because you're like, why? It's like, have you ever seen those things like how a cell phone could just solve the plots of like
everything
30 different, and they're not that old. I mean, there's how many times like Denzel goes and gets coffee and then the guy comes up to Rami Malek and what did you think when he gets in the car? You know what I mean? As like, why are we doing this?
I couldn't think of a reason why except for, oh, okay, I guess this is the part of the movie where we're at that. I figured it was like, it made sense like story-wise, like, but it felt like they're just like, well, I guess we got to end the movie on to the last act. Character-wise, if I was a cop and I got into the suspected serial killer's car, the other thing too is like, I never got a read on Rami Malek. Like, I can't tell how tense he is or, everyone's so
I think he was pretty tense because like he pulls his gun when he goes boom and he just hands up, he starts freaking out.
Right.
I think I think because he's Rami Malek and he's so just like one-dimensional robot, it was hard to translate. That was like, if you want to go back to 7, you can see Brad Pitt kind of slowly deteriorate because he's like a hothead. And then they were like, Rami Malek, we want you to kind of get unhinged as this goes. But, like, the audience can't really tell that he's getting more and more upset.
Yeah.
He's kind of just monotone.
I mean...
And so maybe another actor would have let us know that, like, it's really getting to him, that they're not progressing.
Right. And, I liked, there's something, like, it could be something where it's, like, maybe his character is just kind of, like, bottles up emotion. So, like, when he went crazy, it kind of like all explodes out all at once, and that unexpectedness is like part of it. Like, that I think that's cool and that works. Like, I was still into the scene, but I think was wondering, you know, like I was kind of wondering where it was going. Like, you know, we're heading towards some sort of climax at that point. But yeah, if I was that character, I would be like, no, this is dumb. No good can come from this. But, you know, I guess if you're a cop and you've got a gun, and he probably also, I mean, they were doing.
But you didn't search the car, man. I was like, that's ballsy, because when he went and opened the gate, when he could have something under his seat.
Yeah. I mean, in the trunk, as they kept on talking about and everything like that. So,
how many holes would you have dug?
Oh God, it looks like they dug 20. You know what I mean? Like,
so did that tell you, like, after he kills Jared Leto and he keeps digging?
I think
holes,
that's like him.
He's frantically hoping that there's bodies,
it's like you're trying to, like, because I mean that's the thing, is if you get that confirmation, you're like, okay, I killed a piece of shit. But you're never gonna get that closure. But that's cool. Like that whole thing about, like, you know, the whole movie is about not having closure. So that's an interesting subject to take on. But it's hard to make it palatable. You know what I mean? And it's hard to make it, you know, traditionally engaging. You know what I mean? This is a good, like, serious, dour cop sort of thing. But yeah, it's a harder to tack on, say, something like a car chase or a gunshot, you know, gunfight or whatever, or anything like that into it. So it's a more heavy on, you know, the cop procedural stuff and everything like that. But, you know, I'm surprised there aren't more. Like, if I was a movie studio, I would just make all my movies set in the 90s. For the very reason you're talking about, where it's like...
Totally. You get so many more plot like, there's so many more open-ended plots that cell phones just ruin.
Or even, like, industries. Like, you can have record shops and stuff like that, and it's probably less weird. You know what I mean? Like, it's a... There's just more physical things that you can have going on there. So, like,
I love when he was like, hey, can I borrow your phone? And they pull out, like, a rotary dial phone for him to use. He's like, it's a local call.
Yeah.
I mean, kids watching that, they must have no idea what the shit is going on.
Or just the idea that you could, like, I don't know, get away from, like, police, kind of a police raid on the house you're in. Just because, you know...
You can just send police to SWAT my own house? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, that, but, you know, or, you know, now that we're in spoiler territory, you can fucking cover up a murder, saying some chick got stabbed to death when she was, like, clearly shot. Or I was a little confused by that, too. Like, did they just not say that girl got shot, or...
Right, like, did the medical examiner just say, like, yeah, I'm just gonna write it down here that...
Lost the bullet. She fell on some bullets down an elevator shaft. Totally was a suicide. You know?
Very strange. So, I'm still confused. Was she a missing girl, or was she just some girl that was just running around and kind of stumbled into their crime scene?
Good question.
Like, what is...
She looked like she was dirty or something. She looked like she got away from... I just... You know, I didn't even think about that. I just assumed that she got away from the killer and then, like, startled him. But, yeah, you're right. She could have just been running and startled him. I suppose in the end it almost doesn't matter or whatever, but...
Yeah, there's a few things. Like I'm thinking, okay, so the killer, whether or not it was... You know,
Leto or otherwise,
Leto or not, you know, kills people and then moves them, like, and then they you know, and then he's trying to figure out if this is connected to the old murders that he was trying to do, where they move them to, like, the old bridge reservoir or whatever, you know. So him telling him they're buried out in the desert and in the valley, it doesn't add up, right? Of, like, his whole thing was killing them and then displaying them, kind of, almost, right? So I'm thinking, like, is this just a total game, or is he the guy that maybe he did some of the murders, but he wasn't the one who picked up the jogger?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Because the jogger was more, like, still missing somehow. I don't know. And by the way, like, the opening scene?
I was gonna bring that.
Okay, did that scene work for you,
weird.
Or were you kind of confused by it?
I thought it was interesting that they didn't go full on, like, murder encounter. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, but it kind of adds. That made me honestly think of, like, Zodiac a little bit or something like that. It did add
totally.
a little bit of realism in that sense that it's like, oh, it's this nothing happened really. Like, this person was harassed by another car, and she was scared, and then this person followed her, and it seemed like they had ill intentions, but like then she gets away. So it could be one of those, like, maybe that was Jared Leto. Like, it could have been like Jared Leto's fascinated with the serial killer and wanted to play games and never actually did anything. You know what I mean? Yeah, it totally adds to that moral, or not moral, that kind of like gray area of just like not knowing what was happening. It was interesting, but it was a little bit like, it did kind of feel a little bit like, okay, what was that for? You know what I mean? But in the end, I guess I ended up liking it. But that I think the fact that that's the only quote unquote like kind of Silence of the Lambs serial killer encounter that you have, because everything else is just, you see the aftermath, right? It's just bodies and pictures and visits to the morgue, unless I'm forgetting something, right?
Yeah, no, I'm trying to think. I mean, it was interesting because the whole movie, they have two suspects. One is kind of the sex offender, peeping Tom guy,
yeah,
and he's so shaken, and I think, you know, he plays it perfectly, where he's like, I don't know anything, I'm freaking out, you know, holy shit, I didn't do anything. Like, he's freaking out, but then kills himself, which is kind of like, you know, what do they always say? Like, the guy who sleeps in the jail is guilty, and the guy who's up all night pulling his hair out is innocent. You know, like, that's what they always say. And then Jared Leto, obviously very comfortable, kind of when he gets arrested. But is he comfortable because he's confident that he didn't do it? Like, if you're innocent, you got to be freaking out. But he seems very comfortable, because he's like, I want to see what you guys know, and that whole cat and mouse game. So to me, I don't know, it always kind of came back to him being the actual guy.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, it still leaves it, even though they didn't have any evidence, it still like seems like something's going on with Jared Leto. And, you know, it would almost, it's I don't know, I'm trying to figure out if I would have liked to know more about, like, who his character was or not, but I do kind of like him just being mysterious. I feel like that adds, you know, like, the whole movie, he is the crux of the movie, and it's like, you know, the less kind of, the more you make him a vague, like, he could be or couldn't be kind of thing.
Because all they talk about is, like, did you know he can confess to a murder, you know, 10 years ago or something, or 20 years ago that he never did? Like, the guy's just he's just a crime nut, you know. Yeah. But yeah, they don't really. I mean, there's just not that. He doesn't have a Facebook page in 1990, right? So like, there's not message boards and stuff. You know what I mean? So you kind of.
Well, it's also like that whole thing of like, I think the most interesting, you know, dramatic conflict in the movie is the two cops that want this thing so badly to be true, but they just, it's not quite there. Yeah, I think those scenes where it's like they're so close, but like they just don't have the one physical thing that they need are the most interesting things in the movie.
Would you been more satisfied if they left out the scene where Denzel burns the barrettes and just confirms by the envelope, he sees the red beret, and then that's it. Movie ends.
Honestly, I think the fact that Denzel, I like the way that it did it, because I think it's more interesting, the idea that Denzel is basically trying to perpetuate a lie to hide Rami Malek from the shame of potentially killing an innocent person. Like, I like all, because it really is.
Can you imagine, like, the difference though of killing a Sparva? Killing Jared Leto versus killing just some like blonde girl running around like the LA Reservoir. It's got to be a shocking difference in how you sleep at night type thing.
I mean,
but yeah, I agree.
And it was a little bit more, same thing. Like, they both were like instinctual fuck ups and everything like that, but it's like Jared Leto was like, it's the equivalent of like pushing your friend with a shotgun, like over and over, being like, hey, you know, like at a certain point, it's like, okay, it was not surprising that he ended up getting killed, but it's still, I think I think the fact that it's an unanswered question that you're never going to have answered is going to be the thing. That's the thing that made Denzel go nuts, really, it wasn't just what he did, is the fact that it was in service of nothing. You know what I mean? Like, he ruined his life for a crime that was never solved, you know, potentially.
Right.
So, but, you know, that's the thing. It's so hard to make that, like, you know, just describing this, it's like, yeah, that's really hard to make it feel like a satisfying good time at the movies. And I gotta say, it's pretty, you know, even for Denzel's movies aren't usually that dark, right? Like, I've never seen Man on Fire.
Fallen is probably pretty...
Actually, you know, Fallen is pretty dark, because I'm trying to think of movies that end darkly like that. But yeah, Fallen ends pretty dark, and what else did he do that was kind of like that?
He's done, like, was he in Pelican Brief, or am I thinking of somebody else?
I've never seen it, but yeah, he was definitely in that. Yeah, but it's cool. Honestly, I'm just happy to see him doing his thing a little bit. It's nice that he's still able.
Yeah, it's like a little treat.
Yeah,
you get a little Denzel,
and he's like he like really hasn't lost a step, I would say. Like, you know, he's still playing his age, I think, appropriately. Like, I think this is a good character, good pocket for him to be in. Still chewing his gum really hard. I'd lighten up on the gum chewing just a little bit, but
yeah, I got to go back. I'll watch the Equalizers. I've never seen them.
Me neither.
But I'll go check those out. But, like, yeah, like, what was the last one he did where he's like that eccentric, weird lawyer?
Oh, Elijah something
yeah,
Jr.
I didn't see
it either. Yeah.
I just didn't look.
I've been kind of out because he seems like he's been doing that Equalizer thing for a minute. Like, I've kind of missed a lot of, you know, the Liam Neeson type of movies. So, but he's good at that shit, man. I like seeing him do that sort of stuff. So.
I watched an interview where a guy was like, "Oh, it's been like 20 years since you did Training Day. You know, how's it feel to be a cop again? Or you play cop so well?" And he kind of like, he's like, "I don't know how to play a cop. I only know how to play characters.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I don't know what a cop is. I don't know what, you know." But like, he went on this whole rant about, he's like, "I don't play people based on what their job is," kind of a thing, you know.
Whereas if you ask Nicolas Cage, like, he literally picks, like, you know, sometimes people are like, what profession would you ideally play? And, like, apparently if you ask Nicolas Cage, he has, like, a list of, like, astronaut, firefighter, space, you know, like, he has, like, all of the next 5.
Like, criminal, terrorist, mastermind. We started, by the way, Face Off, me and Ash. And we only made it about half an hour before she never, no. I mean, when do you think the sweet Ash would ever have come across Face Off?
Oh, man, it's
and it's like, you just throw on a mid-90s John Woo, John Travolta, Nicolas Cage, Insanity film, and I almost feel like I'm committing spousal abuse, you know what I mean, making her watch that.
Right
it's
before
so
bed,
bad. Like,
no less.
Oh, it's horrible. Like, we got to the point right before the transformation is kind of, they're pitching it to John Travolta, like, "Hey, man, you're the only one who can do this, man. You got to take one for the team. You got to get your face ripped off." And then we went to bed, but it almost feels cruel. Like, not like there's some other ones, classics that she hadn't seen, but making her watch Face Off is almost too much for me.
Yeah, man, you gotta show her all of the Nicolas Cage classics. You know.
Yeah, we're working our way. Even Con Air, like, I'll watch Con Air. It's on TBS or something. I'll or The Rock, even a Gone in 60 Seconds or something. Yeah. There's some good Cage films, you know, Raising Arizona.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But the Face Off, man. Oh, God damn it, John Woo. What were you thinking?
I mean,
what were you thinking? Like, the opening
pure John Woo. That's like,
I know, man. But like the dude, like, when he opens the laptop and it's like, "I'm gonna blow you away." Like, the animation screens and everything are like, so horrible, dude. It's horrible. That you can literally see people with, like, they're hanging from strings, and then they get kicked and they fly, like, weirdly, like the physics doesn't allow for it. Like, it's so bad, John Woo. What the fuck are you doing?
I mean,
you know what I mean? It's so bad.
He never, I feel like John Woo is like one of those guys that, like, didn't translate as well or whatever, because he had Face Off and he had his, like, a few American hits, but I always feel like his, like, early stuff is, like, more, I don't know, I just feel like more like, fun. I don't know, like, it feels like I I like Face Off and everything like that, but like I feel like people like look at John Woo like, oh yeah, John Woo, but like his shit's always been schlocky.
What was his big hit? I can't even remember. John Woo to me is just
and like his big hits,
like all the Jackie Chan ones.
No,
right?
no, did
he do the Hong Kong movies?
No, it was Chow Yun-Fat was his dude. I think.
Oh, there we go. Excuse me.
Yeah, and honestly, I get them all confused too, but like because he did like several Chow Yun-Fat movies and they're all kind of identical, but like the action scenes of that are dope. Like it's all just excuses for operatic action sequences, and I think like the thing that probably was his biggest Achilles heel was like when he got to America and like he had some big movie successes is like he tried to do more prestige serious stuff. Like Wind Talkers I think was his downfall, especially because that was an Oscar play, but he is not an Oscar
with Nicolas Cage
too, but it's like ridiculous when you see the action scenes in that movie. It's like, no, this is like so over the top. Like, how can you take this seriously? But it's like, so that's the whole thing. It's like tone and everything like that. But like when John Woo does over the top shit, it's great. Like his worst movies are the ones where it feels like he's like kind of like on autopilot or whatever. Like, you look at like say Mission Impossible 2 these days, and that movie's pretty boring for the most part, except for like I don't know.
Except for the helicopter in the tunnel scene or whatever the hell.
No,
that
was the first one.
He loved. Was that the first one?
No. Oh, sorry. The 2 was the one with the bad motorcycle fight scenes or whatever.
Oh right, yeah. Was that the one where he's rock climbing for a while?
Yes, that's the one.
Oh, okay, there you go. I did forget, like, because you see it like, I don't know, once a week on Reddit, but the Nicolas Cage dressed as a priest scene.
Yeah, he's
doing like the dance. That is a future Halloween costume for me, for sure. And I'll do the dance too.
I feel like you would need to have prosthetic eyeballs for a costume like that, just because his eyes are so...
I mean, I'll have to cut my hair like real short.
Yeah.
Because he's got the full-on Caesar, that 90s Caesar they all had.
Yeah, all the styles in that, man, are so
it's really good. John Travolta's like trashy young daughter that's like weirdly not quite punk, not quite goth, not quite...
She's got a nose ring, so you know she's edgy.
I was like, what is this? She's nothing. She's not. What kind of makeup is that? You know what I mean? She's all over the place. But anyway, I don't know. All right. Well, there you go. John Lee Hancock. He says there's no ending to the movie. Like because he said the crew all came up to me after we filmed it, and they were all like, all right, well, so tell us, like, did he really kill him or not? And he was like, I don't know. I don't know. So no one knows. John Lee Hancock, the writer, director, he doesn't even know. It's supposed to be
like you never know, and it's that
you never know.
And it's cool.
I like to believe that he was a killer of women. You know what I mean?
I could definitely either scenario, Schrodinger's cat or whatever. It's like either scenario totally makes sense in my mind. But the fact that it becomes less about the case they're working on and all about this like kind of this other development or whatever is interesting, because it feels like it's like less about the girls and everything and more about this, like, clearly it became personal at some point, to a point where, like, you couldn't extract yourself from this situation. I feel like that's the question the movie's dealing with, right? Like,
I guess. I don't know. What happens to Denzel if more bodies just start piling up? And it's obviously the same guy.
I kind of wanted.
What is Rami Malek supposed to do?
That's kind of the sort of shit I wanted to see. Like, I wanted Jared Leto to get killed like around the, I don't know, hour 20
like
mark,
85 minute
mark.
Yeah,
like, you know what I mean? And then like I would like to see it being like, the whole last act is them dealing with the fallout of it, instead of the whole last act being the lead up to the murder, it being them dealing with the murder. And then it would be great to see Denzel go through all of this, like looking through all this stuff and then kind of saving Rami Malek from guilt and everything like that. And then a good twist, in my opinion, would be that, oh hey, more bodies start turning up. Like, I know that would take away from the whole kind of like unknowing question, existential guilt kind of thing, but that would have been more of a like, I feel like driven the point home a little bit more. But, so it's tough because that falls more definitively on one end of like, oh, this guy killed him and everything like that. But yeah, like I felt like it sucked because I felt like I was like more engaged with the movie. I felt like the movie felt like it was starting to ramp up, and then it like ended a little bit. You know what I mean? But it's kind of got that thing, you know, like it might have been doing that No Country for Old Men thing where like they purposely like rev you up and then like pull the carpet out from under you, so you have to deal with that feeling of dissatisfaction or whatever. So
the old Coen brother dissatisfied trick. I guess one last thing, I don't know, is Rami Malek semi-retired, or is he taking a break? Because they kind of show his replacement, and he's like a ball buster type, you know what I mean?
Oh, really? I totally missed that.
Remember that whole thing where like he's like, oh, we're going to get to the bottom of this, and he's like shaking by the pool, just like 1,000-yard stare.
Yeah, I remember him sitting by the pool, but okay, gotcha. So the other cop there was like another cop talking to him by the pool?
No. Like the cop comes to visit him, gives her the envelope. She gives it to him.
Yeah.
But back at the precinct, another cop has like assumed control. And so I'm like, is his career done? My mind goes, how is he going to pay for that house? He how is he going to pay for those kids? He's living in LA. My God, his house must be a $3 million house.
Do you think if a guy that was a prime suspect in your murder investigation suddenly went missing himself, like you would then probably become the prime suspect in that, or like you would definitely be yourself like investigated, right? Probably.
I mean, assume. Yeah, but what I'd be like, yep, it's another unsolved one. But in your mind, you know there was justice done.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I think you'd be okay to return to work. So I didn't understand his kind of shell-shockedness. You know what I'm saying?
I think, it's probably the whole thing where it's like, until he gets that one thing that like does say, yes, you were right, it's always going to be nagging at him kind of thing. Because, like, I mean, he's basically going to turn in, not exactly, but I assume they're like, you know, like the vicious cycle thing, like, you know, it's probably going to eat away at him for the rest of his life, like it has Denzel to a degree. Probably, hopefully not as much, because Denzel's kind of spared him that, maybe.
I just hope he can get back on his feet, you know what I mean? He's got to pay for that pool.
I know, man. He's like,
I mean,
you know,
that was a nice little house.
Yeah, that was pretty.
Probably in a nice neighborhood
and everything.
I don't know, Silver Lake or something. Yeah, I mean, I guess it was the 90s. Fuck, I always see things as like, oh
How
shit,
expensive
man.
is that?
You know, I forgot the whole 90s factory. That house was still probably expensive, but today it's astronomical.
I mean, everything was going to probably get fucked up in the Rodney King riots in about a year or two from the... See, that was the one thing I was like, why would they... Because if the script was written in 93, was there any reason for them setting this in 90 other than just like a round number or something? Because I was like, oh...
I think maybe just the influences of when he was living in squalor in the apartment, maybe. Like he kind of wanted to tap back into that same time. He was like, I saw an interview with Hancock where he's like, we went back to where that flop house is. Now it's a Whole Foods.
That's funny.
You know what I mean? So he's like, the whole area is different. The whole area got gentrified. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, believe me, there's still grimy ass places. And they were like, we had to go up into, you know, we had to go super east. We had to go up into, you know, different parts of the valley. There's plenty of shitty LA out there. Trust me. Like, you know, LA is sprawling.
Yeah, it just moves. It doesn't get better.
And especially in the last couple of years. So you can find Skid Row-ish places for sure to do some filming if you wanted to capture that mood. But well, there you go. I mean, we went pretty long. I think we agreed we were going to do about a 25 minutes, and
it's about on par for how we do whenever we
a little bit over,
keep it short. Yeah.
Well, there you go. Well, we hope you guys have enjoyed. We went on a pretty lengthy Brendan Fraser rant, you know, as we do. You know what I mean?
You gotta take the time to discuss the Encino Man when you bring him up. So
well, there you go. Well, Jared Leto. I mean, are you excited about the Gucci movie with Ridley Scott? Are you excited about Morbius? Are you excited about him doing Tron? He's doing another Aronofsky movie, I think. Is that the Aronofsky movie he's doing? Tron? Is Tron doing Aronofsky?
No, Aronofsky? I don't think so.
He's doing like the supernatural thriller at sea movie or something with Jared Leto. Jared Leto's got too many projects.
I guess, yeah. The dude works way too much for a 50-year-old vampire.
Now he's full on.
Guy.
He took like a couple of years off, and now he's...
his post-Oscar, I'm going to take some time off kind of thing.
But I mean, he was saying like someone asked him like, "Oh, what character would you like to go by?" He's like, "Blade Runner." The dude Nealon or Nyland or whatever his name was in Blade. Yeah, the blind. He's like, that role. I was like, I'd totally be.
Didn't he almost actually go blind because he like fucking closed?
Yeah, he left the contacts in too long.
I mean, what are?
Yeah, he had like, he was actually blind.
I mean, that's cool. Like, I personally think they're not gonna make another Blade Runner sequel, or I think it would be, you did a good one, walk away, kind of thing. But whatever, maybe. But Morbius, I couldn't give two fucks about. I'm not really too.
All right.
I mean, are you excited about?
Nah. I mean, I think after Venom, my taste for the Sony Marvel is really. Like, I don't know. I mean, in a way, I don't love the Disney Marvel. I don't love the Sony Marvel, but Jared Leto being a comic book character, I just can't help but think it's gonna have that weird, like a Spawn movie feel to it in a weird way, like a Hulkish.
Wouldn't you say
with
the same
Norton
thing about Tom Hardy playing a character? Because
I didn't love that.
Because that's the thing is like I'm interested in Tom Hardy playing Venom. That sounds cool, but like the product they got was very watered down. And from whatever that Morbius trailer is like, oh, I know what this movie's gonna be. It's gonna be the same thing. It's gonna be like boring to look at.
It's got Green Goblin vibes, with Willem Dafoe in a gas chamber freaking out. Like it's got all that weird transformation shit, and I don't know, man. Yeah, I mean,
it's just not really, like I bet you they'll make it, if they can stick with it for a while, maybe it could become something interesting. But it's also like, superhero. I think at this point people are so like cued into what the pattern of a superhero origin story is going to play like. It's the first movie is never the most interesting anymore. So I think, maybe down the line they could do something interesting when they get like all of their Spider-Verse characters going and shit like that. Like, maybe it could be cool. Like, I heard, what's his name? Andy Serkis is directing the second Venom. So, okay, maybe that could be interesting because that's a guy that probably knows how to do some cool stuff with the weird CGI symbiote and probably has ideas for that. Yeah, maybe that'll be cool. And they keep on talking more and more and more about how this third Spider-Man movie is going to be the thing that like connects and spins off all of these other Sony movies because they're basically, it sounds like they're just basically doing a live action Spider-Verse or whatever. But I'll be interested in all that when that starts going on. It's going to get real confusing.
I'm already confused. It's hard enough for me to pay attention.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. But, well, there you go, guys. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. We went a little bit long. It's one of those like, did you guys ask for an hour and a half review of a movie that is going to do probably notoriously bad for HBO Max? But, yeah.
We like our reviews to be about as long as the movies themselves,
Yeah, it actually does help the YouTube algorithm and confuse a number of people into thinking that we've somehow uploaded a full-length version of the movie.
Like our commentary or something like that.
Sure, yeah. It's happened. We've got a few of them out there. But, well, there you go. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. We appreciate it. Throw us a like. Throw us a subscribe. Leave us a nice comment. I'm tired of the Volpe sucks comments that are constantly being left on the Rocky Palooza video.
Keep them coming, people. I love it. I live for it. No, keep them
We're being attacked. I think we got a nasty one this week for the Zac Efron video that we did. There's a segment we're just kind of briefly talking about hoping that Zac Efron isn't being swindled out of his money. And at the time of the video, we were explaining that like, oh, he's a child, he's a man-child, but really he's like 35 years old. I think he's older than us. And I think at the time of recording, we thought he was like a 23-year-old dude doing High School Musical still in our minds.
Man-child is a state of mind, not a age. So I think
right. So much like Brendan Fraser, we don't want him swindled by some weird new age Svengali and taken advantage of. There was a young lady on YouTube very upset by our take, thinking that we didn't understand the message of his show and that how dare you make a video making fun of him and things like that.
Damn.
So it's Zach, if you're listening. I mean, I think we covered it in that video. We love you. We wish you well. Tell Steve, your weird guru to F off and cut him out of your life. Preserve those millions.
I mean, we should have known better than to stir the Efron hive. So apologies.
Yeah, I agree. But we wish Zac Efron nothing but the best. Again, we are available and willing to take over any financial, spiritual guidance you may need. That offer is always an email away. You know what I mean? Between our two schedules, we'll figure it out. We'll work it out.
I'm happy to trade any crystals for unmarked briefcases of cash or, bonds will do fine.
One of those bags of dollar sign bags, you know?
Big old dollar sign.
Even to just move into the pool house or something.
Yeah, that works.
Or
if you got rubies or jewels, I'll take those.
He must. Yeah. He must. We also have a lot of gems that we could sell you that have a lot of different supernatural abilities. So if you're interested in that, please contact us and we will supply those for you at a reasonable cost. You have to understand the market.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you guys so much. We'll never tell you to hit the notification bell. That's kind of against our stance on the whole thing. So we'll go as far as to ask you to hit it, hit subscribe. But we'll never quite ask you to hit the notification bell. We feel that's just a little too
bridge
aggressive.
Too far. We don't want to ask that much from you guys. We know our limits.
No, but please leave us a nice comment. Tell us who killed those poor girls. Was it another stranger? Was it Jared Leto? Let us know. Let us know in the comments. We'll talk to you guys next time. Check us out on thedisorderly.com. Nick's got stuff coming. He's doing a top 10 shows of 2020. That's coming. So keep an ear out from that. You'll see that soon. We'll get more reviews, segments, you name it. Maybe some sports. We'll get Mr. Volpe involved in some sports ball. Big baseball fan.
Oh, yeah, the biggest.
Can you name 4 professional baseball teams? Go.
Cardinals, the Phillies.
From what city?
Oh, I gotta name cities? No, we didn't agree to this.
Okay, give me four.
Oh, teams. Wait, what's that? We gotta go. I'm seeing. Oh, I'm sorry. We're all out of time, people. We'll get back to this part next week. And
there you go. Yeah, when he's done reading all the WandaVision comics and researching Major League Baseball, we will be back with a report, and Mr. Andrew Volpe will tell us how many touchdowns it takes to win a sports ball game. And, well, there you go. We'll catch you next time.
See you, people.